The champagne bubbles rose in golden spirals, but I couldn't taste them. Around me, crystal clinked against crystal. Laughter spilled through the hotel ballroom like expensive perfume. And somewhere a string quartet played something classical that I should probably recognize. I didn't. All I could focus on was the weight of the pen in my trembling hand, and the divorce papers spread across the small table in the corner where Marcus had cornered me. "Just sign them, Elena." His voice carried that edge of impatience I'd grown so familiar with over 3 years of marriage. "You're making a scene." I wasn't making a scene. No one even noticed us tucked away behind the towering Christmas tree, its white lights casting shadows that made Marcus's face look harsh. Unfamiliar, or maybe I'd just never really looked at him before. Maybe I'd been too busy trying to be enough, cooking his favorite meals, pressing his shirts, shrinking myself smaller and smaller until I was practically invisible. My fingers tightened around the pen. Black ink, silver barrel, such a small thing to end a marriage with. "It's Christmas," I whispered, hating how my voice cracked. "Couldn't this wait until what? Until you stop being so goddamn difficult?" Marcus leaned closer, and I caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something sharper, another woman's perfume probably. The same one I'd smelled on his collar for months. "I have plans tonight, Elena. Plans that don't include watching you cry over something that's been dead for a year." My eyes burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of all his colleagues from the law firm. Not in this beautiful ballroom where everyone looked so polished and perfect. I was the only broken thing in the room, wearing a dress I'd bought on sale 3 years ago, because Marcus said I didn't need new clothes when we were saving for the future. Our future. What a joke. I pressed the pen to paper, my hand shaking so badly the signature came out jagged, barely legible. Elena Marie Chen. Soon to be just Elena again. Elena the failure. Elena the not enough. There. I dropped the pen and it rolled off the table, hitting the marble floor with a small, pathetic sound. "Merry Christmas to you, too." Marcus was already gathering the papers, not even looking at me. "My lawyer will be in touch about the apartment. You have 30 days. 30 days. 3 years of marriage. 30 days to pack up the ruins." He walked away without another word, melting into the crowd of beautiful people in their beautiful clothes, and I was left standing there with mascara probably running down my face and champagne I couldn't drink burning in my stomach. The Christmas tree lights blurred into stars, and I realized I was crying after all. Silent tears that tasted like salt and failure. I needed air. I needed to be anywhere but here. The hallway outside the ballroom was blessedly empty. All white marble and gold fixtures that probably cost more than my entire year's salary as a kindergarten teacher. My heels clicked too loudly against the floor as I stumbled toward what I hoped was an exit. Any exit. Just somewhere I could breathe without feeling like I was drowning. I turned a corner and collided with something solid. Not something. Someone. The impact sent me staggering backward, and strong hands caught my elbows, steadying me before I could fall. I looked up and up, into the darkest eyes I'd ever seen. Almost black, framed by thick lashes that seemed unfair on a man. His face was all sharp angles and shadow, beautiful in a dangerous way that made my breath catch for reasons that had nothing to do with the collision. "I'm sorry," I gasped, trying to step back, but his hands remained on my arms. Not tight, not bruising, but firm, steady. "I wasn't watching where I was. You're crying." His voice was deep, accented with something I couldn't place. Italian, maybe, or something Eastern European. It rumbled through his chest and into my bones. "I'm fine." I tried to smile, to pull away, but he didn't release me. His thumb moved almost imperceptibly against my arm, and I became suddenly, viscerally aware that I was touching a stranger. A stranger who smelled like winter air and something darker. Leather and smoke and danger. He was tall, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's car, black, perfectly tailored, with a dark gray shirt underneath that made his olive skin seem to glow. His hair was dark too, styled back but with one piece falling across his forehead. He looked like he belonged in a movie. Not in a hotel hallway at a Christmas party for lawyers and their wives. Ex-wives, I corrected myself bitterly. You're not fine. It wasn't a question. His eyes traced my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. But I couldn't. I was trapped in that dark gaze like a moth in amber. Who made you cry? No one. It's nothing. I finally managed to pull free, wrapping my arms around myself. The hallway suddenly felt cold despite the heating. Just a bad night. A bad night, he repeated, and something about the way he said it made those two simple words sound like a threat. Like he was cataloging the offense for future retribution. Behind him, two men appeared from around the corner, both large, both wearing dark suits that didn't quite hide the bulk beneath. Security, or bodyguards, or something else entirely. The man, because I didn't know his name, couldn't even begin to guess who he was, raised one hand in a subtle gesture, and the two men stopped immediately, fading back like shadows. That small movement told me more than words ever could. This wasn't someone who asked for things. He commanded them. I should have been afraid. I should have run. Instead, I stood frozen as he reached up and caught a tear on my cheek with his thumb. The touch so gentle it made my throat tighten all over again. What's your name? He asked. Elena. It came out as barely a whisper. Elena. He said it like a prayer, like a promise, like something sacred. I'm Dante. Just Dante. No last name. But the way those two men in the shadows straightened at the sound of his name told me everything I needed to know. This was someone important, someone powerful, someone I should absolutely stay away from. I should go, I managed, taking a step back. Then another. I'm sorry for bumping into you. I really should stay. Another command, soft but absolute. Have a drink with me. I can't. I need to. What? Go home to an apartment that wouldn't be mine in 30 days? Cry myself to sleep alone on Christmas? I really can't. His jaw tightened, and for a moment something flickered in those dark eyes. Frustration, maybe, or determination. You shouldn't be alone tonight. I'm always alone. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Raw and honest and pathetic. I pressed my hand to my mouth, horrified. I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that. I should go. This time when I turned to leave, he didn't stop me. But I felt his gaze on my back like a physical touch, heavy and burning, following me all the way down the hallway until I turned the corner and finally, I could breathe again. The elevator ride down felt eternal. I watched the numbers descend, 10, 9, 8, each one taking me further from the ballroom, from Marcus, from the beautiful stranger with eyes like midnight, who'd touched my face like I was something precious instead of something discarded. The lobby was chaos. Hotel staff rushed around with trays and luggage. Guests checked in and out, and somewhere someone was arguing about a reservation in a loud, carrying voice. I pushed through the revolving door and out into the December night, where snow had started to fall in thick, wet flakes that immediately soaked through my thin dress. I'd left my coat inside, in the ballroom, draped over a chair near where Marcus had handed me divorce papers like they were nothing more than a business transaction. I couldn't go back. I'd rather freeze. The parking garage was 3 blocks away, and by the time I reached it, I was shivering so hard my teeth chattered. My heels had rubbed blisters on both feet, and my hair hung in wet strands around my face. I must have looked like a drowned rat as I fumbled for my keys with numb fingers. The car, a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door and an engine that coughed like it had pneumonia, was parked on the 3rd level. I'd circled for 20 minutes to find a spot because I couldn't afford valet parking. Another small humiliation in a night full of them. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, measured, multiple sets. My heart kicked into overdrive. The parking garage was mostly empty, shadows pooling between the concrete pillars, and I was suddenly, painfully aware that I was alone. That no one knew I was here. That I could scream, and no one would hear. I walked faster, my keys clutched between my fingers like a weapon the way my father had taught me when I was 16. Almost there. Just a few more steps. Elena. I spun around and there he was. Dante, standing between two concrete pillars with those same two men flanking him, and behind them, a black SUV with windows so dark I couldn't see inside. The vehicle's engine hummed, a low purr that somehow sounded predatory. "How did you—" I started, but the question died on my lips. Of course he'd followed me. The real question was why. He moved toward me, and I instinctively stepped back until my spine hit my car. Trapped. The word echoed in my head like a warning bell. "You're shaking." He shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it around my shoulders before I could protest. The fabric was warm from his body heat, and it smelled like him, that intoxicating mixture of winter and danger that made my head spin. "You followed me." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Yes." No apology, no explanation. Just that simple affirmation that should have terrified me but instead sent something hot and confusing coiling through my stomach. Why? He stepped closer, so close I could feel the heat radiating from him, could see the snow melting in his dark hair. "Because you were crying. Because someone hurt you. Because—" He stopped, his jaw tightening again. "Because I wanted to. You don't even know me." "No." His hand came up, and I held my breath as he tucked a wet strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my skin. "But I'm going to." It wasn't a prediction. It was a promise. Or maybe a threat. With him, I couldn't tell the difference. "I need to go home," I whispered. "Not like this. Not alone. Not on Christmas." His thumb traced my jawline, and I shivered for reasons that had nothing to do with the cold. "Let me take you somewhere warm, somewhere safe." "I don't know you." "You know enough." His eyes held mine, and I saw something there that made my breath catch. Hunger. Not the casual interest of a man who'd seen a pretty girl crying. This was darker, deeper, more consuming. This was obsession wrapped in expensive fabric and beautiful words. I should have said no. Should have gotten in my car and driven away and never looked back. Instead, I heard myself say, "Where?" The restaurant was the kind of place I'd only ever seen in movies. Dark wood paneling, candlelight that cast everything in gold, and silence. The kind of expensive silence that came from thick carpets and staff trained to move like ghosts. We were the only customers, which seemed impossible for a Saturday night, especially during the holidays. "Is it closed?" I whispered as Dante guided me through the entrance, his hand resting at the small of my back. That touch burned through the thin fabric of my dress, possessive and claiming in a way that should have alarmed me. "It is now." He said it casually, like closing an entire restaurant was nothing unusual, like he did it every day. One of his men, the taller one with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, stood by the entrance as we passed. Another positioned himself near the kitchen. Watching, always watching. It should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made my skin prickle with awareness that this wasn't normal. None of this was normal. A waiter appeared from nowhere, pulling out a chair at a table near the fireplace. The flames crackled and popped, throwing shadows across Dante's face as he sat across from me. He'd given me his jacket, but I still couldn't stop shaking. Shock, maybe? Or the delayed realization of what I'd just done. Gotten into a car with a strange man, let him bring me to a closed restaurant, sat down across from him like this was a date, instead of whatever twisted thing it actually was. Wine? Dante didn't wait for my answer. He spoke in rapid Italian to the waiter, who nodded and disappeared. His accent was thicker now, rolling consonants that sounded like music and menace all at once. "I shouldn't be here," I said, gripping the edge of the table. The wood was smooth and cool beneath my palms. Real wood, expensive, probably older than I was. "This is insane. I don't even know your last name." "Moretti." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that same intensity from the hallway, like he was memorizing every detail, cataloging my features for some purpose I couldn't begin to guess. Dante Moretti. The name meant nothing to me, but I saw the way the waiter's hands had trembled slightly when he'd taken the order. I saw the deference in every staff member's movement, the fear wrapped in perfect professionalism. "What do you do?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. "Business." One word, flat and final. A door slamming shut on further questions. The wine arrived, deep red, poured into crystal glasses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I took a long drink, needing the warmth, the courage, the numbness. It tasted like cherries and something darker. Blood. My traitorous mind whispered. Tell me about him. Dante's voice cut through my thoughts. The man who made you sign papers on Christmas. How did you... But of course he knew. He'd seen everything. The tears, the trembling hands, the way I'd fled that party like something hunted. It doesn't matter. It's done. His name. It wasn't a request. Command seemed to be all Dante Moretti knew how to give, and foolishly, dangerously, I found myself answering. Marcus. Marcus Chen. My ex-husband, I guess. The word tasted bitter. He's a lawyer. We've been married for 3 years, but he... I stopped, pressing my lips together. Why was I telling a stranger this? Why did it feel like a confession, like absolution, like something sacred passing between us in this firelit room? He what? Dante's fingers tightened around his wine glass, and I watched the muscle in his jaw clench. Anger. He was angry on my behalf, and that realization did something dangerous to my chest. He cheated. For months, probably. I kept finding signs, perfume on his shirts, late nights at the office, phone calls he'd taken in another room. I laughed, but it came out broken. I was so stupid. I kept making excuses, kept telling myself I was paranoid, that I wasn't being a good enough wife. Tonight he handed me the papers and told me to sign. Said he had plans. With her, probably. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dante didn't move, didn't speak, but something had shifted in the air between us. Something dark and volatile that made my pulse race. You weren't stupid, he said finally, each word precise and controlled. Too controlled. You were loyal. There's a difference. Loyalty didn't save my marriage. No. He leaned forward, and the candlelight carved his features into something almost cruel, almost beautiful, but it tells me everything I need to know about you. And everything I need to know about him. The way he said it made ice slide down my spine, like he was making calculations, drawing conclusions, planning something I couldn't see. I took another drink of wine, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Why did you follow me? I asked again, needing to understand. Why am I here? You could have anyone. You're clearly... I gestured vaguely at the closed restaurant, the security, the expense of everything. Important. Powerful. Why would you care about some nobody crying in a hallway? You're not nobody. He said it with such absolute certainty that I almost believed him. And I followed you because the moment you looked at me with those sad eyes, I knew I couldn't let you walk away. I knew... He stopped, seeming to struggle with something. I knew you were supposed to be mine. The possessiveness in those words should have sent me running. Instead, heat flooded through me, pooling low in my belly. This was wrong. Insane. I'd just signed divorce papers 2 hours ago, and here I was, sitting across from a dangerous stranger who looked at me like I was something he wanted to devour. You don't know me, I repeated weakly. I will. Another promise. Another threat. Starting now. Tell me about yourself, Elena, everything. So I did. Maybe it was the wine, or the warmth of the fire after freezing in the snow, or the way he listened like every word I spoke mattered. I told him about growing up in a small apartment in Queens, with parents who worked 3 jobs between them to keep food on the table. About becoming a teacher because I loved children, loved their honesty and wonder, and the way they saw magic in everything. About meeting Marcus in a coffee shop 5 years ago, and thinking he was my fairy tale, successful, charming, everything my mother had wanted for me. About how slowly, steadily, that fairy tale had turned into a cage. He wanted me to quit teaching, I heard myself say, staring into my wine glass. Said it wasn't worth the stress for what I made. That I should focus on supporting his career instead. Making connections at firm parties, hosting dinners for his colleagues, being the perfect wife. I laughed bitterly. Turns out I failed at that too. You didn't fail. Dante's hand shot across the table, catching mine before I could pull away. His grip was firm, almost painful, and his eyes blazed with something that stole my breath. He failed you. He took something precious and treated it like garbage. That's his failure, not yours. Tears burned again, but I blinked them back. I'd cried enough tonight. Why do you care? We met an hour ago. Because... He stopped, his thumb stroking across my knuckles in a gesture that felt both comforting and claiming. Because I recognize something in you. Something that calls to me, and I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Not yet. His smile was dangerous, predatory. But you will be. Food arrived. Dishes I couldn't name, each one more beautiful than the last. Risotto that gleamed like pearls, meat so tender it fell apart at the touch of a fork, vegetables roasted with herbs I'd never heard of. I'd barely eaten all day, and hunger took over, embarrassing me as I devoured plate after plate, while Dante watched with satisfaction. Good girl, he murmured when I finished the risotto, and those two words sent electricity racing across my skin. You need to eat. You're too thin. No one had cared about whether I ate in years. Marcus had always been too busy, too focused on his own needs. And my parents worked such long hours that family dinners had been rare, rushed affairs. But Dante watched me like it mattered. Like I mattered. Tell me about your family, I said, desperate to shift the attention away from myself. His expression shuddered immediately, walls slamming down behind his eyes. They're dead. The blunt statement hit me like a physical blow. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It was a long time ago. He drained his wine glass, and for a moment I saw something raw flicker across his face. Pain, maybe. Or rage. My father was ambitious. It got him killed. My mother and sister were collateral damage. That's horrible. I reached across the table without thinking, covering his hand with mine. How old were you? 17. He looked down at our joined hands, and something softened in his expression. Old enough to take over. Old enough to make sure everyone involved paid for what they did. The words should have terrified me, should have confirmed every suspicion building in my mind about who and what Dante Moretti really was. Instead, I felt a strange kinship with the boy who'd lost everything, who'd had to become hard and dangerous to survive. You rebuilt, I said softly. You survived. I did more than survive. His fingers threaded through mine, holding tight. I became what my father never could. Stronger, smarter, more ruthless. I made sure no one would ever dare touch what belongs to me again. That possessiveness again, wrapping around me like silk chains. I should pull away, should leave, should go back to my empty apartment and my empty life and forget this night ever happened. But Dante's hand was warm around mine, and his eyes held promises of things I didn't dare name. And for the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, I felt seen, wanted, protected. Even if the protection came wrapped in danger. We talked for hours, or rather I talked, and he listened, occasionally asking questions that made me reveal more than I intended. About my dreams of opening my own preschool someday, about the children I taught and how each one felt like a small miracle. About the books I read late at night when Marcus was out, romances and thrillers where people were passionate and dangerous, and nothing like my safe, suffocating life. Not so safe anymore, Dante said with dark amusement, reading my thoughts. You got into a car with a stranger, Elena. Came to a closed restaurant with armed men at the doors. That's not the choice of someone who wants safety. He was right. God help me. He was right. What do you want from me? I whispered. He stood abruptly, coming around the table before I could react. His hand cupped my face, tilting it up to meet his gaze, and I stopped breathing entirely. Everything. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I shivered. Your time, your thoughts, your trust. Eventually, his voice dropped to something dark and possessive that made heat pool between my thighs. Everything else. I just got divorced today. I know. He leaned down, his breath ghosting across my lips. I don't care. You were never really his. You're meant for someone who will worship you, protect you, give you the world, someone who will burn it all down before letting you cry alone in a hallway. That's insane. Yes. His lips curved into a smile that was all predator. But you're still here. I was. Despite every rational thought screaming at me to run, I was still here, trapped in his orbit like a planet circling the sun, drawn inexorably toward something that would either warm me or incinerate me completely. "Take me home," I heard myself say. His expression darkened. "Not yet." "Dante, 1 more hour. Give me 1 more hour with you, Elena. Then I'll take you anywhere you want to go." It was already past midnight. Christmas had bled into the day after, and I had nowhere to be, no one waiting for me. What was 1 more hour in this beautiful, dangerous dream? 1 hour, I agreed. His smile was triumphant, possessive, absolutely devastating. I had no idea that agreeing to that hour would change everything. The hour stretched into 2, then 3. We moved from the restaurant to his car. That sleek black SUV with leather seats that smelled like luxury and something uniquely him. One of his men drove while the other sat in the passenger seat, and Dante kept me tucked against his side in the back, his arm around my shoulders like he'd been holding me for years instead of hours. "Where are we going?" I asked, as the city lights blurred past the tinted windows. "Somewhere you can rest." His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder, absent and possessive. "You're exhausted." I was. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving me hollow and shaky. But more than that, I felt safe in a way that made no sense. This man was clearly dangerous. The guns I'd glimpsed under his men's jackets, the way people moved out of his path, the closed restaurant, and the deference and the cold authority in every word he spoke. I should be terrified. Instead, I let my head rest against his chest and listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The building we pulled up to was in Tribeca, all glass and steel and doormen in uniforms. The penthouse, naturally. Dante's hand stayed at my back as we rode the private elevator up, his touch burning through my dress. When the doors opened directly into his apartment, I forgot how to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan. The city spread out like a carpet of diamonds. The space was enormous, sleek furniture in blacks and grays, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than I'd make in a lifetime, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But it was the view that held me captive, all those lights stretching endlessly into the night. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Yes." But when I glanced back, Dante was looking at me, not the view. "Sit. I'll get you something warm to drink." I sank onto the leather couch, my blistered feet screaming with relief as I slipped off my heels. The coffee table held a few books, business journals, a novel in Italian, something that looked like poetry, personal touches in an otherwise impersonal space. Dante returned with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, rich and dark with a hint of cinnamon. He'd removed his tie and rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars, evidence of a life lived harder than the penthouse suggested. "Thank you," I said, wrapping my hands around the mug. The warmth seeped into my bones. He sat beside me, too close, but I didn't move away. Couldn't move away. His presence was magnetic, overwhelming, and I found myself leaning into it like a flower turning toward the sun. "Tell me about your apartment," he said. "The one you're losing." I laughed bitterly. "It's nothing like this. Studio in Hell's Kitchen, 4th floor walk-up. The heat barely works, and my neighbor plays saxophone at 2 in the morning. But it was mine. Or I thought it was. The reality crashed over me again. Marcus kept it in his name. Everything was in his name. The apartment, the car, even our bank account. He said it was easier that way, for taxes or something. I was so stupid. Stop calling yourself stupid." Dante's voice went hard. "He manipulated you, isolated you, made sure you had nothing so you'd have no choice but to stay. That's not stupidity, Elena. That's abuse." The word hung between us, heavy and true. I'd never let myself think it before, but hearing Dante say it made something crack open in my chest. Marcus had been careful. No bruises, no marks, nothing anyone could point to. Just a steady erosion of my independence, my confidence, myself, until I was barely recognizable. "I need to find a place," I said, pushing past the ache. "I have 30 days, but on my salary, I trailed off, doing the math I'd been avoiding all night. First month, last month, security deposit. Even a studio in a bad neighborhood would take most of my savings." I'll figure it out. No. Dante set down his mug with deliberate precision. You'll stay here. I choked on my hot chocolate. What? No. I can't. That's insane. We just met. I have 5 bedrooms. 4 of them are empty. His tone brooked no argument. You need a place to stay. I have space. It's logical. It's not logical. It's crazy. You don't let strange women move into your penthouse because they're having a bad day. You're not strange. You're mine. He said it with such casual certainty that my breath caught. And I take care of what's mine, Elena. You need a home. I have one. You need safety. I can provide it. You need time to rebuild your life. I'll give you that time. Why? I demanded, setting down my mug before I dropped it. Why would you do this? What do you want from me? He leaned closer, his hand coming up to cup my face with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the intensity in his eyes. I want you to stop crying. I want you to stop flinching like you expect the world to hurt you. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I want you to understand that you're not alone anymore. You don't know me, I said again, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. Then let me. His forehead touched mine, and I could feel his breath against my lips. Stay. Not forever. Not even for long if you don't want to. But stay until you figure out what comes next. Stay where I can keep you safe. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to refuse, to leave, to go back to my dying car, and my saxophone-playing neighbor, and my safe, predictable life where strange men didn't offer me penthouses and protection wrapped in possession. But I was so tired of being rational. So tired of being careful and small and grateful for scraps. 1 week, I heard myself say. I'll stay for 1 week while I look for a place. Dante's smile was slow and satisfied, like he'd just won something far more significant than a temporary houseguest. 1 week. He showed me to one of the guest rooms, enormous, with its own bathroom and a bed that looked like a cloud. He gave me one of his shirts to sleep in, since all my clothes were back at the apartment I apparently no longer had rights to. Sleep, he commanded, pausing in the doorway. We'll deal with everything else tomorrow, but I couldn't sleep. I lay in that massive bed, wearing his shirt that smelled like him, and stared at the ceiling trying to process everything that had happened. Divorce papers, a collision in a hallway, a closed restaurant and hot chocolate, and a penthouse overlooking Manhattan. A man who looked at me like I was precious instead of disposable. My phone buzzed. Marcus. I almost didn't answer, but some masochistic part of me needed to know. What? My voice came out cold, unfamiliar. Where are you? He sounded annoyed. I went by the apartment to get some things and you're not there. You went by the apartment you're kicking me out of. How thoughtful. Don't be dramatic, Elena. I need to know where you are. For the lawyer. For the settlement. I'm somewhere safe. Safer than I'd been in years. Protected by a man who'd followed me into a parking garage because I was crying. You'll hear from me when I'm ready. Elena. I hung up. Then I blocked his number, and Sarah's number, his affair partner, who I'd been too cowardly to confront, and everyone else who belonged to that old life. The life where I was small and quiet and grateful. When I finally slept, I dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous promises, and hands that held me like I was something worth protecting. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For one disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The party, the papers, Dante. I stumbled out of bed, still wearing his shirt, and followed the coffee smell to the kitchen. Dante stood at the counter, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt that somehow made him look even more dangerous in daylight. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian in a tone that made ice creep down my spine. He saw me, and his expression shifted immediately, softening. He said something sharp into the phone and hung up. Coffee? He was already pouring a cup, remembering somehow that I took it with cream and sugar. Thank you. I perched on one of the bar stools, hyper-aware of my bare legs and messy hair. I should go. I need to. I have things to do. What things? Finding an apartment, getting my stuff from Marcus's place, calling my parents to let them know that we're... The word divorced stuck in my throat. Your parents don't know? Dante's eyes sharpened. I couldn't face sacrifice so much for me to have a good life. And I wrapped my hands around the coffee mug. I failed. Stop. He came around the counter, his hands gripping my shoulders. You didn't fail. Say it, Dante. Say it, Elena. You didn't fail. I didn't fail, I whispered, not believing it. Again. Like you mean it. Something about the command in his voice, the absolute certainty, made emotions swell in my throat. I didn't fail, I said louder. Good girl. His hand slid down my arms, leaving heat in their wake. Now, your things. Give me the address and my men will retrieve them. I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm telling you. He picked up his phone, already dialing. You're not going back there. You're not facing him again. My people will get your belongings and bring them here. That's not necessary. It is. His eyes went cold, and I saw that dangerous edge again. Because if I see the man who made you cry on Christmas, who threw you away like garbage, I'll do something I can't take back. So you'll stay here, safe, and let me handle it. The possessiveness should have scared me. The casual implication of violence should have sent me running. Instead, I felt tears prick my eyes again. But not from sadness. From the overwhelming realization that someone cared. Someone was willing to stand between me and the things that hurt. Okay, I said quietly. Satisfaction flashed across his face. He made several calls in Italian while I drank my coffee, watching the morning light play across the city. Within an hour, 2 of his men arrived. The scarred one from last night and another with cold eyes and steady hands. I gave them my key and a list of what to get. My clothes, my books, the few photos I had of my parents. Everything else could stay. I didn't want any reminders of the life I'd tried to build with Marcus. They left, and I was alone with Dante again. I should shower, I said awkwardly. Get dressed. I've imposed enough. Impose more. He caught my hand, pulling me toward him until I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Stay for breakfast. Stay for the day. Stay for as long as you need. Why are you being so nice to me? Because... He seemed to struggle with something, his jaw clenching. Because you deserve it. Because when I saw you crying, something in me recognized something in you. Because I've built an empire, Elena, but it's empty. And you make it feel less empty. The confession hung between us, raw and honest. I reached up without thinking, my hand cupping his face the way he'd done to me. He leaned into the touch, his eyes closing briefly. I'm broken, I whispered. I'm freshly divorced and broke, and I have nothing to offer you. His eyes opened, blazing with an intensity that stole my breath. You're not broken. You're surviving. And you have everything to offer me. Your time, your presence, your trust. That's all I want. That's all? I tried to smile, to lighten the moment. Not very ambitious for someone who apparently owns half of Manhattan. Oh, I'm very ambitious. His thumb traced my lower lip again, that same gesture from last night that made heat pool low in my belly. But I'm also patient. I can wait for the rest. The rest. Everything he'd promised over risotto and wine. Everything his eyes kept saying, even when his words stayed careful. Breakfast, I managed, stepping back before I did something stupid like kiss him. You mentioned breakfast. His smile was knowing, satisfied, like he could read every thought in my head. Get dressed. I'll make pancakes. You cook? I have many talents, Elena. The way he said it, dark and promising, made me shiver. You'll discover all of them eventually. I fled to the guest room, my heart pounding. This was insane. All of it. But as I showered in his luxurious bathroom and put on his shirt again because I had nothing else, I couldn't bring myself to care about sanity. For the first time in years, I felt alive. The days blurred together in a way that felt like falling, or maybe flying. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Dante's men brought my belongings that first afternoon, everything packed in neat boxes that they carried up without a word. I sorted through my old life in his guest room, separating what mattered from what didn't, and realized how little had actually been mine. Clothes I'd bought on clearance, books with broken spines, a jewelry box my mother had given me for my 18th birthday, empty except for the wedding ring I'd already removed. I threw the ring away. Dante worked from home most days, taking calls in Italian and sometimes Russian, his voice carrying that cold authority that made even his people flinch. But with me, he was different, softer. He made me breakfast every morning, pancakes, omelets, French toast that melted on my tongue. He asked about my day, my students, my dreams. He listened like every word mattered. And slowly, dangerously, I stopped questioning it. On the third day, he took me shopping. I protested. I couldn't afford new clothes, couldn't accept more from him when I'd already taken so much. He simply looked at me with those dark eyes and said, "You need a winter coat. The one you had wouldn't keep a cat warm." We went to stores where assistants called him Mr. Moretti with reverent fear, where they brought champagne and closed sections just for us. His security followed at a discreet distance, always watching, and I tried not to think about why a businessman needed armed guards. Try this one. Dante held up a cashmere coat in deep burgundy, and when I put it on, his eyes darkened with approval. Perfect. "It's too expensive. It's perfect," he repeated, and that was the end of the discussion. He bought the coat, and 3 others, and dresses I'd never have anywhere to wear, and boots that cost more than my monthly salary. When I tried to refuse, he leaned close and whispered, "Let me take care of you, Elena. Let me give you the things you deserve." So I did. God help me, I did. That night, we ate takeout on his couch, Chinese food from containers, nothing fancy, and it was somehow more intimate than the closed restaurant. His arm draped over my shoulders as we watched a movie, and I let myself sink into his warmth, his strength, the steady presence that made me feel safe in a world that had proven itself anything but. "Tell me about your business," I said during a commercial break. His body tensed slightly. "What do you want to know?" "What you do." "Import, export, real estate." "You never really said." "Import and export," he said carefully. "Among other things. Family business, passed down from my father." "The father who died when you were 17. "Yes," his fingers traced patterns on my shoulder, absent and soothing. "I rebuilt what he lost, made it stronger, made sure we'd never be vulnerable again." There was something he wasn't saying, something lurking beneath the surface. But when I opened my mouth to ask, he kissed my temple and changed the subject. "Your school's winter break ends next week," he said. "You'll go back to teaching." It wasn't a question, but I nodded. "I love my job. The kids, they're the best part of my day." "Good." His hand tightened on my shoulder. "You should do what makes you happy, but I'll have Marco drive you." "Marco?" "My driver. The one who brought us here that first night." Dante's tone shifted, becoming harder. "You're not taking the subway anymore, Elena. Not alone." "That's ridiculous. I've taken the subway for years, and now you don't have to." His eyes met mine, implacable. "This isn't negotiable. You're under my protection now, which means you travel safely. Marco will take you to school and pick you up. Anywhere else you need to go, he'll drive you. I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm telling you." He cupped my face, his thumb stroking my cheek. "Do you understand? You're mine to protect now, Elena. That means I decide what's safe." The possession in his voice should have made me angry, should have triggered every feminist instinct I had about independence and autonomy. Instead, heat flooded through me, and I found myself nodding. "Okay," I whispered. "Good girl." He kissed my forehead, lingering. "I need you safe. Need to know where you are, that nothing can touch you." "Why?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Why do you care so much? We barely know each other. I know enough." His hand slid into my hair, fingers tangling in the strands. "I know you take your coffee with too much sugar. I know you read before bed and that you cry at sad commercials. I know you give everything to everyone else and nothing to yourself. I know—" His voice dropped, rough and intense. "I know you're supposed to be mine, Elena. I knew it the moment I saw you. That's crazy. Yes." His lips curved into that dangerous smile. "But you're still here." I was. A week had become 8 days, then 9, and I showed no signs of leaving. My things were unpacked in his guest room. My toothbrush sat next to his in the bathroom, my books lined his empty shelves, and my teaching supplies cluttered his pristine counter. I was making a home in his space, and he was letting me, encouraging it, orchestrating it with careful precision. On the 10th day, Marcus called from a number I didn't recognize. "We need to talk about the settlement," he said without preamble. "My lawyer says you haven't responded to any of his calls, because I blocked him." I was in Dante's kitchen, making tea while he worked in his office. Through the open door, I could see him at his desk, focused on his laptop. "I'll respond when I'm ready." "Elena, be reasonable. You can't just disappear. Watch me." The words came out stronger than I felt. "You wanted the divorce, Marcus. You got it. Now give me time to process everything else. I'm trying to be fair here. You'll get your share of the apartment sale, a reasonable division of assets." "Assets?" I laughed bitterly. "Everything was in your name. What assets do I have to divide?" "That's not my fault. You never wanted to be on the accounts because you told me it was easier this way. You convinced me that—" I stopped, took a breath. I wouldn't let him gaslight me anymore. "We'll handle this through lawyers. Don't call me again." I hung up, my hands shaking with anger, and something that felt like triumph. For the first time, I'd stood up to him, refused to be steamrolled by his reasonable tone and careful manipulation. "Good." Dante's voice came from behind me, and I turned to find him leaning against the doorframe. His eyes were dark with approval. "You're learning your worth." "I'm trying." I set down my phone. "He wants to settle, divide everything." "Everything he stole from you, you mean?" Dante crossed to me, his hand settling on my waist. "What do you want, Elena? From the divorce? From him? What would make this right?" "I don't know. My share of the apartment, I guess. Enough to start over." I looked up at him. "I don't want to take him for everything. I just want to be free." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or something darker. "You're too forgiving." "Maybe. But I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to become someone angry and twisted." I touched his face, feeling the slight stubble beneath my palm. "I just want to move forward, then we'll make sure you can." He pulled out his phone. "I know lawyers, good ones. They'll handle everything." "Dante, I can't afford. They work for me," he said simply. "Consider it a favor. Another favor." I tried to smile. "I'm racking up quite a debt." "No debt." His hands tightened on my waist, possessive. "Everything I give you is freely given, Elena. No strings, no expectations, except—" He paused, his eyes searching mine. "Except that you stay, that you let me keep you safe." "For how long?" "As long as you'll let me." He leaned down, his forehead touching mine. "Ideally?" "Forever." Forever. The word hung between us, terrifying and tempting. I'd promised forever to Marcus, and look how that ended. But this felt different. Dante felt different. Solid and real and utterly certain in a way that made my breath catch. "I scare you," he said, reading my expression. "Yes." "Good." His thumb traced my lower lip. "You should be scared. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would make you run if you knew. But with you—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "With you, I want to be better. Want to be worthy of the way you look at me. How do I look at you? Like I'm not a monster." His voice went rough. "Like I'm someone who could be saved." "Maybe you are." "Don't." He pulled back slightly, his expression hardening. "Don't make me into something I'm not. Don't romanticize what I do, who I am. I can give you safety, protection, everything you need. But I can't be your hero, Elena. I'm not built for that. Then what are you built for?" His eyes burned into mine. "Keeping you. Protecting you. Making sure nothing ever hurts you again. That's what I'm built for. That's what I'm good at." The intensity in his words made heat flood through me. This wasn't a fairy tale. This wasn't some romance where the broken girl fixed the dangerous man with her love. This was something darker, more primal. This was two people recognizing something in each other and refusing to let go. Okay, I said softly. Okay? Okay, I'll stay. Not forever. I can't promise forever, but for now. Until I figure out what comes next. Triumph flashed across his face, quickly hidden but unmistakable. For now is enough. He kissed me then, finally, after days of careful distance and restrained touches. His lips were firm and demanding, and I melted into him with a gasp. His hand fisted in my hair while the other splayed across my lower back, pulling me flush against him. I could feel his heart pounding, matching the frantic rhythm of my own. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I've wanted to do that since I saw you crying in that hallway, he admitted roughly. Then why didn't you? Because you weren't ready. Because you needed time to trust me, to understand that I'm not like him. That I'll never... His jaw clenched. That I'll never make you feel small or invisible, or less than you are. And what am I? I needed to hear it, needed to understand how he saw me. Everything. He said it with such absolute certainty that tears pricked my eyes. You're everything, Elena, and I'll prove it to you every day for as long as you let me. That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I curled up next to Dante in his enormous bed, wearing one of his shirts, and listened to his steady breathing as he held me close. His arm was heavy across my waist, possessive even in sleep, and I'd never felt safer or more terrified of how much I was starting to need him. The next morning, everything changed. I woke to raised voices, Dante speaking rapid Italian in the living room, his tone sharp with barely controlled fury. I pulled on a robe and crept to the doorway, seeing him pacing like a caged animal while two of his men stood rigid nearby. What do you mean he's asking questions? Dante snarled. Who gave him permission to ask questions? The scarred man, I'd learned his name was Antonio, responded in Italian, too quick for me to follow, but I caught one word that made my blood run cold. Polizia. Police. Dante's eyes cut to me, and something shuddered in his expression. He said something to his men, and they left immediately, disappearing into the private elevator. Elena. What's going on? I stepped into the room, my heart pounding. What was that about, police? Nothing you need to worry about, but the tension in his shoulders said otherwise. Dante, please. If something's wrong, your ex-husband filed a missing persons report. His voice was flat, controlled. He told the police you disappeared after signing divorce papers and he's concerned for your safety. Ice flooded through me. That's ridiculous. I'm not missing. I'm right here. I know that. But he's making noise, drawing attention, and... Dante stopped, his jaw clenching. And attention is something I can't afford right now. The way he said it made everything click into place. The security, the careful movements, the closed restaurant and the deference and the fear in people's eyes when they heard his name. You're not just a businessman, I said slowly. No. What are you? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war in his eyes, the desire to protect me from the truth warring with the need to be honest. I'm what my father was, he said finally. What his father was before him. I run the family business, Elena. All of it. The legitimate and the less legitimate. Mafia. The word fell between us like a stone. You're in the Mafia. Yes. I should have been shocked. Should have run. But somehow, I'd known, on some level, I'd always known what he was. The danger that clung to him like cologne. The power that made people bow. The careful way he moved through the world like a predator among prey. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to see me first. Just me. Not what I do, or who I am in that world. I wanted... His hand raked through his hair, frustration bleeding through his control. I wanted one thing in my life that wasn't stained by blood and violence. And then you walked into me in that hallway, crying over a man who didn't deserve you, and I knew you were that one thing. I should leave, but even as I said it, my feet stayed planted. You should. He crossed to me, his hands framing my face. You should run as far and as fast as you can, Elena. You should forget you ever met me and build a safe, normal life far away from this. From me, but I can't let you go, His voice dropped to something raw and desperate. I know I should. I know keeping you here is selfish and dangerous and wrong. But the thought of you out there, unprotected, vulnerable, it makes me insane. So yes, you should leave. But I'm asking you not to. My hands covered his, holding them against my face. If you stay, under my protection, completely, which means following my rules. It means accepting what I am and what I do. It means trusting me to keep you safe, even when the world gets dark. His eyes searched mine desperately. It means belonging to me, Elena. Can you do that? I thought about Marcus, about the safe life that had slowly strangled me, about being small and invisible, and grateful for scraps, about crying alone in hallways because no one cared enough to notice. Then I thought about Dante, about pancakes and cashmere coats and the way he held me like I was precious, about feeling seen and protected and wanted for the first time in my life. Yes, I whispered. I can do that. The relief that flooded his face was almost painful to witness. He pulled me against him, his face buried in my hair, and I felt him shaking. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you, Elena. I swear to you I'll keep you safe. I'll give you everything. You'll never regret this. I held him tight, breathing in his scent, and tried to believe him. Tried not to think about what I was really agreeing to. Tried not to wonder what price I'd eventually have to pay for choosing the monster over the mundane. The police came 3 days later. I was grading papers at Dante's dining table when Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression tight. Miss Elena, Mr. Moretti says you need to come to his office. Now, my stomach dropped. In the 2 weeks I'd been living here, Marco had never interrupted me during the day. Something was wrong. Dante's office was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with books in Italian and Russian. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid-fire Italian that sounded like threats. When he saw me, he ended the call immediately. The police are downstairs, he said without preamble. They want to speak with you about Marcus's missing persons report. What do I tell them? The truth. He crossed to me, his hand settling on my shoulders. That you left voluntarily after the divorce. That you're staying with a friend. Don't mention my name unless they ask directly. And if they do, tell them we met at the Christmas party and I offered you a place to stay. Nothing more. Okay. My heart hammered against my ribs. Elena. He tilted my face up to meet his eyes. This is important. They can't know about us, about what we are to each other. It's too dangerous right now. Can you do that? Yes. Good girl. He kissed me quickly, fiercely. Antonio will be with you the entire time. If they ask anything that makes you uncomfortable, you end the interview. Understand? I nodded. Even though fear was crawling up my throat, this was real. The danger he'd warned me about, the darkness of his world, it was here, in this pristine penthouse, threatening to swallow me whole. The detectives were waiting in the lobby. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes, and a younger man who looked bored. Antonio stood against the wall, watching everything with predatory stillness. Mrs. Chen? The woman extended her hand. I'm Detective Martinez. This is Detective Foster. We just need to ask you a few questions about your whereabouts over the past 2 weeks. It's Ms. Chen now, I said, shaking her hand. Or just Elena. We're divorced. Yes, we heard about that. Your ex-husband is concerned. My ex-husband is controlling. The words came out sharper than I intended. I'm 28 years old. I left voluntarily after he served me with divorce papers at a Christmas party. I'm staying with a friend while I find a new apartment. There's no mystery here. Detective Martinez's eyes softened. I understand. But you have to admit, leaving without telling anyone where you were going, blocking his calls. I blocked his calls because I needed space. Because he destroyed our marriage and then expected me to make it convenient for him. I could feel Antonio's presence behind me, steady and protective. I'm not missing. I'm not in danger. I'm just starting over. Can you tell us where you're staying? Detective Foster asked, looking up from his notes. With a friend. We'll need a name and address. My mouth went dry. Dante had said not to mention him unless asked directly, but here they were, asking. Dante Moretti. He's a friend. I met him at the Christmas party where my ex-husband served me with papers. Something flickered in Detective Martinez's expression. Recognition, maybe. Or concern. Dante Moretti, the businessman? Yes. The two detectives exchanged a look that made my skin prickle. They knew something. Something about Dante that made them wary. Ms. Chen, Detective Martinez said carefully, are you sure you're safe? If Mr. Moretti is pressuring you in any way? He's not. I stood straighter, channeling every ounce of confidence I'd learned from watching Dante command rooms full of dangerous men. He's been nothing but kind to me. He offered me a place to stay when I had nowhere else to go, and I accepted. That's all. And your relationship with him is... Heat flooded my cheeks, but I held her gaze. That's none of your business, detective. I'm an adult. I'm not missing. I'm not being held against my will. I simply left my ex-husband and started building a new life. Is there a law against that? No, ma'am. Detective Foster closed his notebook. But you should know that your ex-husband is threatening to file for a welfare check. Maybe even try to claim you're not in your right mind. Let him try. The anger that surged through me was clean and sharp. I was in a 3-year marriage where I was systematically isolated, controlled, and made to feel worthless. Now I'm out. I'm safe. And I'm not going back. If Marcus wants to waste police resources trying to drag me back into his control, that's his choice. But I'm done being manipulated. Detective Martinez smiled slightly. Good for you, Ms. Chen. Just be careful. Mr. Moretti has a reputation. So did my ex-husband, I said quietly. Spotless record, respected lawyer, upstanding citizen. And he destroyed me piece by piece behind closed doors. I'll take my chances with someone who's honest about who he is. They left after taking my contact information, and I sagged against Antonio the moment the elevator doors closed. You did well, he said in his heavily accented English. Boss will be pleased. Will he? I looked up at the man who'd become my silent shadow. They know about him, Antonio. They know what he is. Everyone knows what the boss is. Antonio's scarred face was impassive. But knowing and proving are different things. You gave them nothing they can use. That's what matters. When I returned to the penthouse, Dante was waiting. He pulled me into his arms the moment I walked through the door, his hand cradling the back of my head. You were perfect, he murmured against my hair. Marco was listening from the security room. You were absolutely perfect. They warned me about you. I pulled back to look at him, told me to be careful, that you have a reputation. I do. He cupped my face, his thumbs stroking my cheeks. Everything they think about me is probably true, Elena. I'm not a good man. But with you, for you, I'll be the best man I can be. Marcus is going to keep pushing. He won't let this go. Something dark and dangerous flickered in Dante's eyes. Then we'll handle Marcus. What does that mean? It means I'm going to have a conversation with your ex-husband about respecting boundaries. His voice went cold. It means he's going to understand that you're under my protection now, and that continuing to harass you would be unwise. Dante, you can't threaten him. I'm not going to threaten him. His smile was sharp as a blade. I'm going to make him understand reality. There's a difference. 2 days later, Marcus stopped calling, stopped filing reports, stopped existing in my life as anything more than a signature on divorce papers. I didn't ask what Dante said to him. I didn't want to know. Winter melted into spring, and somehow, I stayed. My 1 week became a month, then 2. I returned to teaching, with Marco driving me every day in the sleek black car that made my fellow teachers whisper. I found my rhythm in Dante's world. The early morning coffee we shared before he disappeared into his office. The late nights when he'd come to bed smelling like smoke and danger and pull me against him like I was his anchor to something good. I learned the rules. Don't ask about his business. Don't answer the door unless Antonio or Marco approved it first. Don't go anywhere without security. Trust that Dante would always keep me safe. And he did. He was obsessive about it, actually, checking in throughout the day, having his men follow me even when I thought I was alone. Once, a man on the subway made the mistake of standing too close to me, and by the time Marco drove me home that evening, I heard through Antonio that the man had been educated about personal space. I should have been horrified, should have recognized the possessiveness as toxic. dangerous, wrong, but I'd spent 3 years being invisible. And now someone noticed everything, every mood, every need, every fear. Dante saw me in a way no one ever had. And his protection felt like love wrapped in darkness. My divorce was finalized in March. Dante's lawyers had been ruthless. I got half of everything, including the apartment sale, which gave me enough money to truly start over. To get my own place if I wanted. "Are you leaving?" Dante asked, the night the papers came through. We were in his bed, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. "Do you want me to?" "You know I don't." His hand tightened on me. "But I need you to choose this, Elena. Choose me. Not because you have nowhere else to go. Not because you're grateful. But because you want to be here." I propped myself up on my elbow, looking down at him. In the moonlight streaming through the windows, he looked younger, vulnerable, like the 17-year-old boy who'd lost everything and built an empire on the ruins. "I choose you," I said softly. "Not because I have to, because I want to, because you make me feel alive and safe and seen, because I love you." The words hung between us, and I saw his breath catch. "Say it again." "I love you, Dante Moretti." I traced his jaw with my fingers. "I love you even though you're dangerous and possessive and probably a little crazy. I love you because you're those things, and because with me, you're also gentle and protective and good. I'm not good. You're good to me." I kissed him softly. "That's all that matters." He rolled us over, pinning me beneath him, his eyes blazing with emotion. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me. You're my weakness, Elena. The one thing that could destroy me. Then we'll be each other's weakness." I wrapped my arms around his neck. "We'll protect each other. Always." He kissed me deeply, thoroughly, until I was breathless and wanting. "You're mine now. Completely. No going back." "No going back," I agreed. 6 months later, I stood in Dante's living room, our living room now, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of gold and red. My books filled the shelves, my pictures hung on the walls, my life had merged with his in ways I never could have imagined that Christmas night when I'd signed divorce papers while crying alone. "Elena." Dante's voice came from behind me, and I turned to find him on one knee, a black velvet box in his hands. My breath stopped. "I know this is fast," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know we've only been together 6 months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You walked into my world when I'd given up on finding something real, something good. You made me want to be better, made me believe I could be more than what my father's legacy demanded." He opened the box, revealing a ring that made my eyes burn with tears. A single diamond, simple and perfect, catching the sunset light. "Marry me, Elena, not because you have to, not because you're grateful, but because you choose this. Choose me. Choose us." His dark eyes held mine, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, proving that choosing the monster over the mundane was the right choice." I dropped to my knees in front of him, framing his face with my hands. Yes, I'll marry you. I choose you, Dante. I choose us." The smile that broke across his face was devastating, beautiful, completely unguarded. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me like I was oxygen and he was drowning. "Mine," he breathed against my lips. "Yours," I agreed, and I was. Completely, irrevocably his. Our wedding was small, just his most trusted men and my parents, who'd flown in from Queens with tears in their eyes and questions I carefully didn't answer. They knew Dante was successful, powerful, dangerous. They didn't know the specifics, and I intended to keep it that way. "He makes you happy," my mother said, as she helped me into my dress, cream silk that Dante had chosen, simple and elegant. "That's all that matters." "He does," I said honestly. "He makes me feel like I'm enough, like I'm everything." "Then that's all I need to know." She kissed my cheek. "Be happy, my Elena. That's all we ever wanted for you." The ceremony was held in the penthouse, overlooking the city that had witnessed our beginning. Antonio stood as Dante's best man, and as I walked toward my soon-to-be husband, I saw the naked emotion on his face. Love, possession, devotion. Everything I'd ever wanted wrapped in a dangerous package. "I love you," he mouthed as I reached him. "I love you too," I mouthed back. We said our vows with the sunset painting us in gold, promising to love and protect each other through everything. When he kissed me, I tasted salt from my happy tears and felt his hands shake as they held my face. "My wife," he said against my lips. "Finally mine." "Always was," I whispered back. The reception was a blur of champagne and laughter and dancing with a man who moved like danger set to music. His men toasted us with respect in their eyes that hadn't been there before. I wasn't just the boss's girl anymore. I was his wife, part of the family, protected by the same fierce loyalty that bound them all. Late that night, after everyone had left and we were alone in our bedroom, Dante pulled me close. "Thank you," he said into my hair. "For what?" "For seeing me, the real me, not just the monster everyone else sees, for choosing this life, this world, me." His arms tightened around me. "For being brave enough to sign those divorce papers and walk into that hallway and collide with me. For being mine." I tilted my head back to look at him. "Thank you for following me into that parking garage. For not letting me drive away alone. For seeing that I was drowning and pulling me out. I'd drown the world for you," he said simply. "Burn it all down if it meant keeping you safe." I know. And I did. I understood the depth of his obsession, his protection, his love. It was consuming and dangerous, and probably unhealthy by normal standards, but we'd never been normal. "Any regrets?" he asked, vulnerability flickering in his eyes. I thought about Marcus, about the woman I'd been a year ago, small and invisible and grateful for scraps. I thought about crying alone in a hallway at a Christmas party while signing papers that ended a marriage that had been dead for years. Then I looked at the man who'd followed me into darkness, who'd given me light, who'd taught me that being seen and loved and protected was worth any price. "Not a single one," I said honestly. His smile was slow and satisfied and utterly devastating. "Good. Because you're stuck with me now, Mrs. Moretti. No escape. Who said I wanted to escape? No one." He kissed me deeply, but I needed to hear you say it. We made love slowly that night, his hands worshipping every inch of skin, his voice rough with emotion as he told me everything I meant to him. And afterward, as I lay in his arms listening to the steady beat of his heart, I thought about choices, about how life could turn on a single moment. A collision in a hallway, a stranger's dark eyes, a decision to stay instead of run. About how sometimes the monster wasn't the one you should fear, but the one who'd protect you from all the others. About how love didn't always look the way fairy tales promised, but that didn't make it any less real. I'd walked into that Christmas party expecting nothing more than another night of being invisible. I'd walked out divorced, heartbroken, and completely alone. And then I'd collided with Dante Moretti, and everything changed. He was dangerous, possessive, obsessive in his protection and fierce in his love. He was everything I shouldn't want, wrapped in expensive suits and dark promises. But he was mine, and I was his, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Outside, snow began to fall. The first snow of the season, a year after that night when I'd signed papers and run into a hallway, and straight into the arms of the man who would become my everything. I watched the flakes drift past our windows, coating Manhattan in white, making the city look clean and new. "What are you thinking about?" Dante murmured sleepily. "Second chances?" I said softly. "And how sometimes the best things come from the worst moments. Like crying in a hallway at a Christmas party?" "Like crying in a hallway at a Christmas party," I agreed. He pulled me closer, his warmth surrounding me like a shield. "Best moment of my life, finding you there." "Mine too," I admitted. And it was true. All of it. The danger, the darkness, the obsessive protection and fierce possession. I chose it all. Chose him. Chose us. Some people might not understand, might see the danger and miss the devotion. Might focus on the darkness and never see the light he brought to my life. But they weren't the ones who'd been invisible. who'd been slowly erased by someone who promised to love them. They weren't the ones who'd been seen, truly seen, for the first time by eyes that promised to never look away. I was Mrs. Elena Moretti now, wife to a dangerous man, protected by forces I didn't fully understand, living in a world where love looked like armed guards and closed restaurants and obsessive devotion. And I'd never been happier, never been more free, never been more completely, irrevocably, dangerously loved. Forever, Dante whispered against my hair. Forever, I promised back.